angels, it's Hailey Reese and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so grateful that you are here and I hope that you are having an absolutely fantastic morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when today's video finally reaches you. Welcome back, you guys, to yet another video in our 31 days of Halloween, where I upload a video every single day from now until October. And today's video is a case that I have been absolutely wanting to cover with you guys here on my channel. Now, this case is devastating. It is just terrible from start to finish. It's heartbreaking and it's a lot to consume. Today, we're going to be diving into the diabolical crimes of Carly Gregg, a 14-year-old who would do the unimaginable just before her 15th birthday. This case is shocking. Again, it's a lot to digest, and it has just simply taken the internet by a storm. If you've been on TikTok, if you're a true crime consumer, if you're somebody who's interested in cases as they are ongoing, this case just happened at the start of 2024. This case is incredibly recent and has already reached a verdict. So welcome back, you guys, to yet another case of Kids That Kill, a series here on my channel where we dive into the minds of some of the world's youngest killers. If you guys do enjoy my content and do want to see more of it, I would just very quickly like to remind you to make sure that you are subscribed down below and that your post notifications are turned on. Again, I am uploading every single day, so I would hate for you to miss a video if you do enjoy my content, of course. And if you do enjoy my content, on that note, one final thing, I would greatly appreciate it if you would go ahead and leave a comment down below or just simply give this video a big thumbs up if it is content that you enjoy and you enjoyed this video. It really does help both me and my channel to know what kind of content you guys are enjoying so I can therefore make more of it. But without further ado, let's dive into this because there is a lot to cover where this case is concerned, and I want to try to cover as much of it as possible. So welcome back, you guys, to yet another episode of Kids That Kill, where we take a deep dive into shocking cases across the world where the killer responsible was a child. What makes a killer? What causes someone to cross the line of dark emotions to the unforgivable act of murder? Is it in their nature, or was it how they were nurtured? Children represent a purity and innocence that we tend to lose as we grow older, but not all children keep that innocence for the span of their childhood, and some can do the unimaginable before even becoming a legal adult. Today we are diving into the disturbing case of 15-year-old Carly Madison Gregg, who at the young age of 14 would brutally murder her mother and attempt to murder her stepfather, then calling upon one of her friends to take a look at what she'd done. The Mississippi girl was recently sentenced to life in prison without parole, but her crime and trial haunted those familiar with it. Understanding the mind of a killer isn't easy for the average person, and cases like this are controversial in nature. Content may be sensitive to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Carly Gregg is evil, and that's not easy to say, but the truth of the matter is sometimes evil comes in young packages, small packages, and this is one of those cases.
So Carly Madison Gregg was born in Flowood, Mississippi to her mother Ashley and her father Kevin. Later, Ashley and Kevin would have another daughter, making Carly a big sister, but heartbreakingly, baby Natalie would have genetic abnormalities leading to her passing at 7 months old. Because of this, Carly would be raised as an only child, and really it was just Carly and Ashley growing up, as Carly's parents would separate. Now, it's said that Carly's father, Kevin, wasn't really in the picture much. Carly's parents had separated, and it seemed like Carly's biological father had a lot of struggles of his own. It was said that he struggled with substance abuse, that he had a drug and alcohol problem, and he also had mental health problems of his own. Beyond the substance abuse, it was said that Kevin could become very physically abusive. And because of this, Ashley had actually filed police reports with the police in regards to Kevin's violence and behaviors. Now, there was an ongoing battle between Carly's biological father, Kevin, and Carly's mother, Ashley, up until Ashley's tragic death. And this was in regards to the visitation rights that Kevin had with Carly. Ashley was trying to revoke Kevin's parental visitation rights because she felt as though Kevin was not a positive influence on her daughter at the time, given his substance abuse and his physical side of him as well, the violence that would come out with him. And during, Carly's time with Kevin, it was reported that she would describe some questionable behaviors by her father when she'd visit him in regards to what he was choosing to partake in. I believe I had read some things where he would blow smoke at Carly. He would encourage Carly to underage drink. He just wasn't, from what we know, the most responsible parental figure. So in 2019, Ashley would meet a man named Heath Smylie, and by 2020, the two would be married, making Heath Carly's stepfather now. Ashley was a geometry teacher at the high school that Carly attended, and it was said that she absolutely loved her students. The school would go on to say that she was loved and respected by both faculty members and students. She was just this light to the school. But Carly didn't seem to love the presence of her mom in the school quite as much as her fellow students and her teachers did. Now, to put it bluntly though, Carly was incredibly academically gifted. She was beyond smart. Carly was so smart that they would move her up a grade, making her younger than her peers around her. But despite being younger, at the time, Carly would have been around 14. Her peers would have been 16, perhaps some 15 in her classes. But Carly excelled at her academics, making her smarter than majority of her peers. By the young age of 13, Carly had taken an exam called the ACT, which is similar to that of the SATs, and she absolutely nailed it, getting a 30 out of 36, which, just for context, is a score that one could expect from perhaps a 16-year-old. Carly's exam results were higher than 90% of test takers. And again, she was just 13 years old, already had skipped a grade. It was very evident just how brilliant Carly was. Now, Carly's grades were absolutely impressive. In English, math, reading, and science, her grades spoke volumes. 88% in reading, all 90s in English, math, and science. Carly had gotten a 95% in math, and her academics did not go unnoticed. She would win academic awards like Student of the Year, and all of her older peers were asking her for help with their work, knowing that Carly was this academic genius. Now I'm gonna pause on Carly for a moment here because this is something that immediately crossed my mind while researching this case, and that's the correlation between crime, specifically killers and serial killers, and high IQs. I was curious to dive deeper into whether or not there is a correlation between those who are highly academically blessed and those who go on to become killers. I mean, Ted Bundy had a above average IQ. In the courtroom during Ted Bundy's trial, it was said multiple times on many of occasions how brilliant Ted Bundy was, and what a shame it was that he was on the opposite end of the courtroom, because he would have made one of the most brilliant lawyers. And then you take a look at somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, who had a high IQ of 145, which places him in the range of borderline genius. So I am interested in digging deeper to see whether or not there is some sort of link between these people who are so highly intelligent heading down a path of murder and unimaginable crime. Though with a quick Google search, I do believe that with society as a whole, there's no substantial link to speak of. But I do find it interesting that somebody with the intelligent level of Carly would go on to do what she did. And we'll touch on that more later in this case, because there are a number of things that Carly did where when you think about it and you really analyze how smart Carly was, it doesn't make sense. But again, we will get there. I just felt it was important to note that some of these killers are smart. So you would think that on paper, this sounds fantastic. You know, Carly's mom has went on and remarried. She now has a stepdad in the picture. Carly's mom is a well-respected teacher at her school, and Carly is this star student. But again, that was far from the case for Carly. Carly did not appreciate her mom working at her school. Now, from the outside looking in on this case, it seems like throughout Carly's childhood, she was just this smart little girl. But as she got older, things really started to change, as they do for teenagers in general. It's not uncommon for teenagers, especially around the age of 14 to 16, 17, to rebel against their parents and have problems. And Carly and Ashley were no exception. The two of them definitely had their problems both at home and at school. For starters, Carly felt like her mom was incredibly controlling. And let's backtrack for a moment here and take a look at Ashley and her parenting style, because it did not go unnoticed that Ashley had suffered the loss of her child, Natalie. And therefore, there are many people who believe that that's kind of where Ashley's stricter side of parenting came. She erred on the side of caution with her child, especially when it came to drugs, to substance abuse, to rebelling, to the dark side of mental health, because she'd seen it with Carly's father. And that was the furthest thing from what she wanted to see happen to Carly. Carly was getting in some trouble at school. In the 7th grade, she had gotten in trouble for bringing, I believe it was a Swiss Army knife, but regardless, she'd brought a knife to school and was sent to an alternative school for 6 months. I'm sure it was some sort of school for troubled students, but she had to attend a completely different school for 6 months until her previous school was ready to accept Carly back. And she had gotten in some trouble in her school as well for breaking into her teacher's computer, getting the test results and sharing it with students, and therefore getting caught for that. So Carly was getting in trouble, but when we think about the things that she was getting in trouble for, besides bringing a knife to school, these weren't insane red flags. I mean, is stealing test results from your teacher appropriate? No. But is it any sort of red flag that this person is going to do what Carly would end up doing? I would say not. Carly would also start dating, and her mom wasn't a huge fan of her relationship choices. She really felt like, and I mean, this makes sense, she's not only a protective mother, but also a well-respected teacher. She really wanted Carly to focus on her academics and her education. And I could understand that even beyond her being a protective mother and teacher, Carly had so much going for her academically. And her mom really wanted her to grow that rather than get caught up in relationships that weren't good for her and activities that weren't serving her. So eventually Carly would break up with her boyfriend that she was dating at the time, but later Ashley would see them at school still together, and it said that she kind of just let it go. She was like, you know what? I can't control everything that Carly does, and she let that slide. But kind of going into Carly's world for a moment here, because with Kids That Kill, I do try to, the best of my ability, get inside the minds of these children who commit the unimaginable. I can understand that perhaps Carly felt a little bit smothered by her mother. And now this is just based off of my own personal assumptions through digging through the case, but if Carly felt smothered by her mom, it must have been difficult to have no sense of identity outside of your home. And what I mean by this is, for a lot of high school students, especially when they're having problems with their parents, things like school, sports, extracurricular activities are a time to get away from your parents and create a separate identity from them. And with Carly, it was like she had to deal with her mom at home and at school. They drove to and from school together. So if her mom is paying close attention to everything she's doing, as parents do, I'm sure Carly did feel a little bit suffocated by her. Carly hadn't been a violent child, but again, she had shown a little bit of an interest in violence and things like knives and of that nature, but she hadn't been a kid who was noticeably violent by any means. Now, Ashley had a lot of control over Carly's online presence, specifically the types of apps that Carly was allowed to be on. And again, this is not uncommon for parents. Now, Ashley, more specifically, did not want Carly on TikTok. And beyond that, it said that Ashley would take Carly's phone at night to charge it, either in the kitchen, in her bedroom, elsewhere in the home, to prevent Carly from just aimlessly scrolling all night or whatever the case may be. She was trying to kind of keep control over Carly's screen time. It's also said that at some points Ashley was going through Carly's phone, specifically trying to see her communications with her biological father. As I had mentioned, there was this ongoing custody battle, and Ashley just didn't want Carly associating with her father at the time, and so she was kind of keeping tabs and monitoring Carly's cell phone just to see what was going on. This wasn't just some divorce gone wrong, this controlling custody battle where Carly's father was this positive role in her life, and due to marital issues, her mom wanted them to have no relationship. This was because there was a lot going on with Carly that her mother could see, and she did not feel like her father was the best of influence for her. Now, Carly was in a dark place. Her friends claimed that her mental health wasn't doing the best. She was causing harm to herself, and it just seemed as though she was losing control of her mental peace of mind. And at this point, there are so many people who will point the fingers and ask, well, where was Ashley in this? What was Ashley doing? Ashley was right there noticing these things and was a really big advocate for Carly to get into therapy. And Carly actually did go to therapy for a moment there, but it wasn't something that Carly felt like continuing. It did seem, though, that Carly was finding her own means of therapeutic activities, one of which being journaling. And journals were something, or specifically Carly's journals, were something that were brought up during the trial. And there are some very, very questionable entries in there, but specifically when Carly does allude to the fact that she's hearing voices and whatnot, she does mention how, I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but it's along the lines of I know this sounds crazy, or this is crazy. But there was a specific entry that Carly had made that I want to reference here because it's very eerie, especially in regards to Kids That Kill. In one journal entry, Carly had wrote, "Life's greatest illusion is innocence." And then she proceeded to stab through the journal as if she was Tom Riddle from Harry Potter. very eerie stuff. So again, Carly really was struggling deeply within her own mind, and her mom wasn't turning a blind eye to this. Carly had tried therapy. Carly had also been prescribed antipsychotic medication, and then was also notably switched to Lexapro for her depression in hopes that it would help where previous prescriptions were not working. And just 5 days after switching Carly's medication, Carly would do the unthinkable. Though I do want to note, it was not believed that switching medications had anything to do with what Carly had done. On March 19th, 2024, the morning and the day started off as normal. Everybody in the home got ready to go about their normal days. Heath had gotten ready to head to work, and both Carly and Ashley had gotten ready to head to school, in which they had both rode together. Now, those who saw Carly and Ashley on the day of the crime claimed that things seemed to be normal, though Carly did seem to some as though she was a little bit off and was thinking about a lot of things. The interactions between Ashley and Carly were not out of the ordinary or anything to raise concern. When school came to an end, both Ashley and Carly got in the car and proceeded to head back home. A seemingly normal day to Carly, though I'm sure the energy may have been slightly off on the ride home, because while it had seemed like a normal day, it was far from it. And Ashley had been given information from one of Carly's close friends that would change everything. After school, Carly's mother had been approached by one of her close friends that was extremely concerned for Carly, and more specifically, the behaviors and the things that Carly was partaking in. This friend explained to Ashley that Carly was going down a very dark path. Carly was drinking a lot. Carly had burner phones that she was hiding from her mother. She also was vaping and smoking a lot of weed, so much so that the friend explained to Ashley it seemed as though Carly just wasn't functioning without it, and the friend was concerned that Carly had an addiction, or at the very least, the start of an addiction forming. And this was obviously very concerning to Ashley. Now, the friend had no intentions of causing a big blow up, and especially had no idea what would follow. The sole intention of this friend was to inform Ashley of the concerns they had with Carly and hope that this would be the final thing and the person who could help straighten Carly out and get her on this path. Carly was so smart. Carly was well liked. She had friends. In fact, throughout this trial, one of the most scary things about Carly is how likable she's described. Absolutely everybody found Carly to be charming, likable. And while there are plenty of people who believe that Carly is manipulative and that's why, nonetheless, Carly was a likable girl and her friends wanted to see better for her. So whether or not the two talked about this on the way home, they had arrived back home and Carly had went to take the family's golden retrievers outside to do their business, while Ashley headed straight for Carly's bedroom, and that was where she would discover vape cartridges. Now, what happens next is captured on a home surveillance camera within the family's home, and it is absolutely chilling. Now, I am going to play this footage for you guys. I do want to note that you do not see any bit of the crime itself. You will solely see Carly's actions leading up to heading towards her bedroom and Carly's actions following the crime. With that said, there is an audio of a scream in the clip, and you do hear the shots fired. So if that's something that you feel may be triggering for you, I would suggest skipping forward to after the footage. This footage is absolutely chilling. You see Carly enter with the dogs and head towards what seems to be the family living room. Carly then turns and looks up the hall and heads towards her room. We then see Carly head quickly towards her mother's room, where a firearm is kept under the bed for protection. Carly quickly retrieves said firearm and walks back towards her room again, proceeding to shoot her mother 3 times in the face. In this footage, a calm Carly can be seen heading back towards the kitchen counter, grabbing her mother's phone and texting her stepdad. We can't tell yet from the footage, but Carly has already made up her mind to kill her stepdad too. Carly then texts her stepdad, "You almost home, honey?" To which he responds that he'll be at work for a little bit yet. Carly responds to this with a thumbs up emoji. Carly then proceeds to get on her phone and text a bunch of friends alluding to the horrible act, but remaining very vague and answering no questions.
Some were FaceTime, some were text messages. We believe the evidence will show that during this time, she was asking them all for help, trying to get them to come over to her house. She wouldn't tell them why. We believe that one of them's going to say he even offered to call 911, and she told him no.
Carly ends up calling a friend of hers and telling her that she's really going through something and that she's not doing well. Her friend has her father drive her over to Carly's house to be with her. Now, when she arrived, she's met by this calm Carly interacting with the family dogs and just seemingly normal. And right away she's thinking, okay, like what's the problem here that I rushed over for? Clearly everything is fine. And that's when a calm Carly begins to ask her friend if she's squeamish, asking her if she's ever seen a dead body, and leading her to the scene of the crime, proceeding to show her her mother's dead body and explain what she'd done. Carly proceeds to tell her friend that she had put 3 rounds into her mother and that she had every intention of placing the final 3 into her stepfather when he returned home, as there was only 6 bullets in the gun. Now, Carly proceeded to tell her friend that he should be home any minute and that the friend should go wait in the backyard while essentially Carly takes care of this. Now, the friend does do so, and while plenty of people are confused as to why the friend would, I mean, think about it. Imagine your friend is now showing you at 15 years old. Guys, this is a fellow 15-year-old minor being shown a dead body of their friend's mother, finding out there's still more ammunition and being told to go to the backyard. I'm sure many of us would just go to the backyard. No one's going to put up a fight with a murderer in front of you. Now, shortly after, Heath would return home. And upon opening the door, Heath describes being met with a gun pointed straight at him by Carly. Now, thank goodness, Heath would move and Carly would shoot, just grazing Heath's shoulder. At this point, Heath begins a scuffle with Carly, so to speak, and gets the gun from Carly. Heath then describes that Carly is hysterical, proceeding to describe her as someone who has just seen a demon.
She was screaming out of her mind, scared. It was like she had seen a demon or something. She was terrified.
Now, Carly was so terrified and so distraught that Heath didn't know about his wife yet and absolutely didn't assume that Carly had meant to shoot him. He thought surely there was some sort of intruder in the home and that was why Carly had shot him by accident. Now, while Carly had grazed the shoulder of Heath, the final 2 bullets had not hit anybody. And after freaking out, Carly gets up and proceeds to run away. Now, Heath is injured and completely confused. So rather than chasing after Carly, Heath is looking for this intruder. Because again, he thinks that there's some sort of an intruder and that that's what's happened. Imagine coming home from a normal day of work and this is what you're met with, right? So Heath calls the police and is looking through the home to try to find what's going on or who could be in there. And that's when Heath is met with the unimaginable scene of his wife deceased on the floor. I can't even imagine.
Okay, sir. Where's your wife? She's dead on the floor of my daughter's stepdaughter's room. What's your your wife's name? Ashley Smylie. Ashley Smylie?
Now, when Carly had ran out of the house, it said that Carly immediately yelled for her friend to run and proceeded to hop the fence, to which her friend also hopped the fence and the two ran away. Now, the friend ran away home, where they would later tell their father what had happened, but Carly just kept running. Now, the friend had told their father about what had happened, and of course, the father took them to the police station to give a report of what had happened. And that was when the friend told their version of events, that they'd received a distressful message from Carly, that they had shown up, that Carly seemed normal, but then proceeded to ask them if they were squeamish, showed them the body, told them to go outside, and while they were outside, the friend describes having heard a shot, some scuffling, some screaming, 2 more shots, and then being met with Carly telling them to run, and they did. And this friend's version of events does correlate with the garage home security footage, where it shows Carly jumping over the fence and taking off, and the friend following. You can also hear within this footage Heath and a little bit of Heath and Carly's scuffle.
Can you tell me what your son's wearing? Hey, I need you to talk to me. What is your son wearing?
He was in jeans and a grayish t-shirt. She's got short brownish hair.
So, jeans, a gray t-shirt, short brown hair.
She ran into the backyard. I tried to follow her. She jumped the fence and ran. She shot me in the neck. It's okay, I think.
Does she still have the gun?
It's on the kitchen counter, I think.
But as law enforcement dug a little deeper, it did seem as though there was a lot more going on behind the scenes than people had realized. Carly, again, felt like her mom was just so controlling. Beyond controlling what apps she could use and who she could talk to and when she could use her phone and who she could date, Carly was certain that the security cameras in the home were there to watch her and not for the family's protection. Basically, from what law enforcement was gathering was that it was just this big mess and that Carly had snapped. Now, initially, Carly had been offered a plea deal, and this plea deal essentially offered Carly 40 years in exchange for pleading guilty. But Carly would not plead guilty. Carly would instead make the decision, despite being informed to really think about it, to take this to trial. Now, in court, they showed everything they could, including all of the footage. Interestingly, Carly cried the absolute most when the 911 call was played with her stepdad, Heath. But when shown her mom being found in the room, Carly sat there expressionless. Carly's expressions throughout the trial also went viral, as she was seen smiling at family members, specifically smiling at her stepfather. In fact, throughout the entire trial, it seemed like Carly's ability to carry on as normal was one of the most chilling aspects of the case. Now, Heath recounted Carly and Ashley's relationship and parenting style, claiming that Carly was Ashley's whole world.
She was, like I said, always thinking about Carly and just Carly's first no matter what. She would do anything in the world for her and would try to get the best for her every day.
And Heath wasn't the only one to disclose this. Others would claim that Carly really cared what her mom thought about her, and there was a lot of pressure on her to make her mother proud, specifically stating it was evident that Carly loved her mom and wanted to please her mom, that she walked on eggshells trying not to upset her mom. How could Carly tell her mom she was having the same mental issues her dad had? And in some aspects, I can sympathize with that. It would really suck to hear that your mother, somebody that you seemingly love, respect, that you want the approval of, thinks so low of somebody like your father, and here you are allegedly experiencing the same mental health and substance abuse problems as your father. Perhaps there was some shame around that. But when I hear that a mother and daughter were close, that they were each other's entire world, I think about my mother and my relationship, and my mom is truly my entire world. And if anything ever happened to her in general, let alone anything done by me, I could never carry on in the way that Carly had. This seemed like somebody who, for whatever reason, had no emotions associated with the killing of their own mother. And to me, that is a level of evil I can't comprehend. During the trial, Heath recounts the horror that he stumbled upon, and I can't even imagine this. But Heath recalls how he came home, how he was met with Carly with the gun, how he was confused by what was going on and he thought there must be some sort of an intruder, how he'd been hurt so he couldn't catch Carly after she'd ran away, and how he would find his wife's body, check her pulse, and pull off the towel to see her mutilated face. Heath was distraught. You guys saw the footage. He could not fathom what had happened, and even trying to understand Carly's role in it must have been, even now, incredibly difficult to comprehend. Now, her friends would testify, including the individual who had reached out to Ashley in hopes of helping Carly.
Testimony of this friend is that he was so worried about Carly's use of smoking marijuana, and so worried about her being high, and so worried about her having these burner phones that her mom didn't know about, that he felt compelled to tell Miss Ashley Smylie that day.
Basically, the friend felt helpless, and like Ashley was the last resort in helping Carly. Now, initially, Carly's defense really wanted to take the route of insanity, claiming that during the events that transpired, Carly completely blacked out and had no idea what it was that she was doing, that she too is a victim in this as well.
Carly Gregg and her mother had a loving, close relationship. We believe the evidence will show that Carly had been suffering from a mental illness, that Carly was not aware on March 19th that she had a mental illness. While the events on March 19th were tragic, the events on March 19th were not intentional.
It was very evident that Carly, while she did suffer with depression, she did suffer from mental health issues, Carly was not deemed insane. Carly would be sentenced to life in prison for murder, life in prison for attempted murder, and an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence. Despite her defense trying to get her the possibility of parole, Carly was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And Carly stood there in shock as the verdict was read. Carly's biological father, Kevin, shared his feelings around this, stating that he felt ashamed, embarrassed, angry, and very upset when he learned of Ashley's murder, saying how they were married for almost a decade and how he had loved Ashley. Now, in regards to the defense of insanity, her father told reporters that girl knew right from wrong. That girl is not insane. That was a very dumb defense if you asked me, but I wasn't involved. Nobody ever called me. And that's from Kevin Gregg, Carly's biological father. However, as I've told you guys, this is a recent case, and Carly's defense has since requested a retrial. An article online reads, "Witnesses necessary to establish Carly's defense were improperly excluded from testifying at the trial. Witnesses were improperly restricted in the testimony they could provide in Carly's defense. Carly did not receive a fair and impartial trial. The defense listed more than a dozen reasons for a new trial in the 9-page motion." Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because it isn't something that was talked about in the trial, and obviously Heath has been deemed a victim in this entire case. But many people online analyzed the behaviors of both Heath and Carly during the trial and felt as though their energy and more specifically, the energy that Heath had towards Carly was alarming. Now again, Heath had only came into Carly and Ashley's life back in 2019, marrying Ashley in 2020. Therefore, Heath hadn't raised Carly the entirety of her life as his own, though Heath would describe that he loved his family life and that he loved Carly as his own daughter. However, Heath stood by Carly, essentially claiming, obviously these are my own words, but he basically felt like Carly wasn't in her right mind in doing what she did and forgave Carly, so to speak. He was seen smiling at her in the courtroom, talking about how intelligent she was, how amazing Carly was, how Carly struggled, but basically he never painted Carly as this monster. And they found it very strange that an individual who'd only known Carly for the years that he had would still love her like his own daughter after she brutally murdered his wife and love of his life and tried to murder him. There were a lot of really inappropriate theories that surfaced in regards to Heath and Carly and Heath and Carly's relationship, alluding to perhaps a whole other inappropriate motive and involvement of the stepfather. But it's very important to note that despite having transferred the security footage onto his computer, I believe it was, regardless, he had transferred the security footage and trying to help the police. Besides being told not to tamper with evidence, he was not ruled a suspect. And as the trial came to an end, there was no suspicion pointing towards any involvement with Heath. It was all online sleuths and online speculation. And while some of the clips that I have seen are strange and it is an odd dynamic, we also don't know how people grieve, what their relationship was truly like prior to the events that would transpire and the murder taking place. So for me, while it is strange and there is a strange energy about it, it's not something that I'm going to dive into. I also want to take a moment just to note that these are real people. This is a real life crime with a real family. Heath is a real person. And I always feel like it's so unfair for us as viewers to take a look at a trial and immediately assume that we know how somebody will grieve or how somebody should grieve or how somebody who's experienced a traumatic event should behave. I certainly don't know how I'd behave if I walked in on the love of my life having been brutally murdered by their child who I've come to love as my own. I don't know how I would behave. So to me, I'm hoping that if there was any evidence alluding to Heath's involvement, law enforcement would have nipped that right away and would have made it a point to investigate that deeper. And therefore, I personally do not believe, especially after hearing Heath and seeing the footage of that day, that he had involvement. But as always, I am curious to hear what you guys think. Understanding this crime is very difficult for me. I've always said that when I dive into these types of cases, I try to put myself into the shoes of everybody involved. I try to see it from all avenues, to the best of my ability, and try to understand, even though it's very, very difficult to ever understand how somebody could do something so horrible. I try to find at least, not a reason, because there's never a reason to play God and take somebody's life, but a motive that I can somewhat comprehend. And here, while Ashley was a protective mother, and while she was even possibly helicopter parenting Carly, throughout this whole case, I just can't find anything that to me should ever have let it get to this point. Even thinking about her being caught with vapes in her room, I just can't imagine, like, as a kid, being caught by something, even a teenager being caught with something, walking into your room, recognizing that you're caught, and then proceeding to just calmly, quickly walk to the bedroom, grab their firearm, and open fire right in the face of their own mother. I can't comprehend it. Now, there are many people who believe the world is a better and safer place with Carly Gregg behind bars.
Carly Gregg is evil.
But there are others who feel as though this sentence is incredibly harsh, that Carly was just 14 years old at the time of the crimes, that Carly was suffering with mental health, and that perhaps she deserves a chance at redemption in life. There are people who are disappointed in the verdict of life without possibility of parole. And that's where I want to ask you watching this video, where do you fall when it comes to child killers? Do you believe punishment should be lessened because of their age? Or do you believe that evil comes in all ages, all shapes and sizes? Let me know. Well, you guys, that is the case of Carly Gregg, a 14-year-old who did the absolute unimaginable to her own mother. My heart is absolutely with the friends and family of Ashley Smylie. This was a unimaginable tragedy, and I can't imagine what they're going through. I saw clips of Carly smiling in the courtroom to her grandparents, to Ashley's parents, and while they've lost a daughter, they've now also lost a grandchild as well. And while what Carly did is inexcusable, it must still be so difficult to mourn who you thought you knew and loved. That is it for today's episode of Kids That Kill. I know that this was a hard one and it was a lot to digest, but I do hope that you guys enjoyed learning about today's case, and I would absolutely love to know all of your thoughts down below. I feel like there's going to be a huge divide as far as what people think of the verdict, so I would love to know your thoughts down below. And that is it for today's video. If there are any other cases, crimes, or mysteries across the world that you would like to see me dive into, make sure to go ahead and comment down below. I read every single comment and it truly helps me to know what it is that you want to see, so make sure to let me know. And please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until next time, I love you. Bye, guys.